people who can help for that safe and principled delivery of assistance.
Thank you. Last question, Stefano Vaccara.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Griffith. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. My interest is more, I mean, of course, relief is important to give goods, to give food. But my question is about your role, the UN role at the moment in Ukraine as a witness of what's happening. I mean, is your personnel there, is it ready to tell the world what it's saying if human rights are crushed? We've been watching now this morning videos where already you can see that. So are you giving instructions to your personnel to have also this role? And if did you have contact with the Russians, and in this case also Ukrainian authority, about this role that the UN can have in this moment in Ukraine?
I think what you're talking there is about human rights monitoring, not humanitarian. And my lane is humanitarian, not human rights. And I fiercely defend that line. It's important to keep us in our lane because we have different principles. But there are, I want to add, to answer your question, that there are human rights missions in Ukraine. They've been there for many years because of the conflict in the southeast. They remain there. I believe that I understand that the High Commissioner for Human Rights has issued a statement today of concern about certain arrests of protesters, if I understand it. So you can be damn sure that they will do their job under these circumstances as well. The humanitarians, my colleagues, we will also be clear when we see infringements of international humanitarian law, which is different. We'll also be clear in our advocacy, which includes direct contact, to answer another part of your question, in our advocacy with all those who can help us get the aid to the people in need. And, you know, we do this all over the world, as you know. I mean, this is not new. This is a story that has been part of my life all these many years, and a story that's been the part of all our colleagues. So we're ready in Ukraine to do that, and we're ready to stand as witness to humanitarian issues and humanitarian needs. And that's why, if I may, just to round up, that's why I think launching this appeal is going to be an important moment of statement of possible need. And we'll answer some of the questions that you have about scale and numbers. And I hope that we'll be able to do that, launch that very early next week in Geneva. Thanks a lot.
Great. Martin, thank you very much. I hope to see you soon again for further updates, but thank you for taking the time. Okay. And now I'll go on with the
thank you.
The rest of the world.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Cheers, Martin. Thank you. All right, thank you. Secretary General will be traveling over the weekend. He will be going to Geneva, where on Monday he will deliver remarks at the opening of the 49th regular session of the Human Rights Council. Later, he will take part in a press conference to launch the new report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, titled Climate Change 2022, Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability. While in Geneva, he will also have a series of bilateral meetings. We expect him back here on Monday afternoon. And there's also a chance that he may appear in front of you later this afternoon at the Security Council stakeout. We will keep you posted on that. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of our peacekeeping operations, is in the Central African Republic today, where he began a 4-day visit. He's expected to meet a number of local leaders, including the president, Faustin Archange Touadéra. He will also meet civil society representatives and people directly affected by insecurity in the country. As you may have seen, 4 of our peacekeeping colleagues arrested last Friday were released yesterday. Mankeur Ndiaye, the head of the mission, reiterated that the UN will continue to work to ensure the protection of our personnel and assets in all circumstances, and we're happy they've been released. want to highlight three ongoing humanitarian situations. As I think Martin said, there are other, we are also keeping a close eye on a lot of other places. On Yemen, we want to reiterate our concern about the grave situation in the country, including the impact of the ongoing conflict, which is causing civilian casualties on a daily basis. More than 23,000 people have been displaced since the start of the year, most of them in Hudaydah, Marib, Shabwa, and Taiz governorates. They join more than 4 million men, women, and children who've been displaced across Yemen since the latest escalation got underway in 2015. Aid agencies are doing everything they can to respond to people's needs, but acute funding shortages are threatening the flow of humanitarian assistance. At the start of this year, 2/3 of major UN aid programs had already been forced to reduce or close due to lack of cash. Further cuts are on the horizon if funding is not received. As it is, food rations have already been cut by half for 8 million people. Those people may soon stop receiving food assistance from the UN altogether. We call on all donors to pledge generously at a high-level pledging conference for Yemen, which is scheduled for March 16th, co-hosted by ourselves, the governments of Sweden and Switzerland. We also urge donors to commit funds before the pledging conference to avoid any major disruption in our humanitarian operations. In Afghanistan, as we had told you, I think a group of 8 senior emergency experts from UN agencies and international NGOs have been in the country. Today, they called for urgent support to life-saving humanitarian action in Afghanistan after a 5-day mission to the country. The emergency experts said they witnessed an enormity of human suffering in Afghanistan, but that they also saw humanitarian organizations able to scale up operations despite massive operational constraints, including the ongoing banking and liquidity crisis. According to our humanitarian colleagues, more than 24 million people, that represents 59% of the Afghan population, now require life-saving assistance in the country. That is a staggering 30% increase since 2021. The Afghan humanitarian response plan this year, which is our largest humanitarian appeal ever launched for a single country, calls for $4.44 billion to provide aid to over 22 million people. It's only 13% funded. And also on Afghanistan, a quick note to say that the head of UNICEF, Catherine Russell, just concluded a 3-day trip to the country. In the statement, Ms. Russell noted the streets of Kabul, scores of very young children dart in and out of traffic, chasing cars and asking for money. In a hospital in Kandahar, she saw emaciated babies lie motionless, two to a bed, too weak to even cry, amid a spike of cases of severe acute malnutrition. More on their press release. On Ethiopia, the conflict in the Afar region continues to develop displacement. The conflict in the Afar region continues to cause displacement, which worsens humanitarian needs. Regional authorities estimate that hundreds of thousands have been displaced by fighting in recent months, including some 200,000 people living in areas that are hard for humanitarian workers to reach. Humanitarian response is scaling up to accessible areas in Afar, but still remains far too insufficient. Assessments have been found priority needs for food, protection for children, and health. Humanitarian assistance also continues in Amhara region. More than 6.8 million people have received food assistance in the past 2 months, including over 230,000 that have been assisted by ourselves and NGO partners in the past week. Some areas near the boundary with Tigray, however, remain inaccessible for humanitarians. In the Tigray region itself, we, along with our humanitarian partners, are continuing to scale back operations due to lack of supplies, lack of fuel, lack of cash. No relief convoys have reached Tigray since mid-December, and we are now at the end of February. During the past week, we, along with our partners, have managed to airlift some 47 metric tons of medical supplies to Tigray, including antibiotics, medicines for malaria and diabetes. But as you know, airlifts cannot replace truck convoys in terms of volume and cost. However, lack of fuel remains a major setback in Tigray as an obstacle for dispatching supplies to health facilities throughout the region. Just a quick note that you will have seen that Geir Pedersen, our envoy for Syria, briefed the council this morning. He said militarily front lines remain unshifted, but we still see all the signs of an ongoing hot conflict. Any of a number of flashpoints could ignite a broader conflagration, he warned. Mr. Pedersen said we have now set a date for convening the seventh session of the small body of the Syrian-owned, Syrian-led UN-facilitated Constitutional Committee, and that is March 21st. Joyce Msuya, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, also briefed the Security Council on the humanitarian situation in Syria. She said the world is failing the people of Syria. Syria now ranks as one of the world's 10 most food insecure countries, forcing families to pull children out of school or use child marriage as a coping strategy. And a quick COVID update from Vietnam, where our UN team, led by the resident coordinator, the acting resident coordinator, Rana Flowers, continues to support the authorities in health and socioeconomic response recoveries due to the pandemic. The team and authorities have trained healthcare workers, provided health and nutrition services for pregnant women, mothers, and their children, provided water, sanitation, and hygiene supplies to schools and health centers. The team has also supported the economic recovery of women in micro and small enterprises. Vietnam has achieved the goal of vaccinating 100% of the targeted population, that's people 18 or above. Of all vaccines landing in Vietnam, over 51 million doses were received through the COVAX facility. And just to round up this note, on a happy note, which small country, which country small in size, with a very nice beachfront, has paid its budget dues in full?
What continent? There's a lot.
Monaco. 52. We thank our friends in Monaco for that payment. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-up questions. On Ukraine, has the Secretary General been speaking to any Russian or Ukrainian officials? And while he is in Geneva, do you expect him to hold any talks on the Russian invasion of
I think we have to see who's in Geneva and what we are doing, what the program will be, the actual program will be once he gets there. So we will keep you updated on that. Well, I think as Mr. Griffiths told you, he spoke to the Ukrainian ambassador. Secretary General had been in touch with Ambassador Nebenzia, I think, a couple of days ago, but nothing new to report.
And on Ethiopia, are all of those trucks still waiting to get into Tigray?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a truck convoy since mid-December.
Could you get us a number of how many trucks are waiting to get in?
Will do.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Lenka.
Thank you, Stefan. Follow-up, and just to confirm, the Secretary General spoke with Foreign Minister Lavrov on February 14, but has he spoken to Putin at all within the past months or something?
He has not.
And one more question, please. Would he like to go to Moscow, or has he requested the meeting?
I think, excuse me, as he said, his good officers are available. All the parties involved know that. Benno and then Stefano.
Thank you. Did the Secretary General lose trust in Russia after constantly lying about starting a war and then actually doing it?
I think the Secretary,